real stories of werewolves, of Dogman history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
The time I met a werewolf. Dear Scary Stories NYC. The creature moved through the tree line with deliberate stealth, with its tall, pointed dog ears. Behind the smoky dive bar where neon beer signs cast sickly colors through grimy windows, the creature hunted. Its silver coloring caught fragments of light as it crept forward on powerful hind legs, lit from within eyes scanning the darkness. A couple had wandered behind the building, lost in each other's embrace against the brick wall. The woman's laugh echoed softly in the night air, mixing with a distant throb of bass from inside. They were oblivious to the predator watching from the shadows. The werewolf tensed, muscles coiling like springs. This was his moment. With a bone-chilling howl, it burst from the underbrush, arms outstretched, lit-up eyes blazing in the darkness. The couple's romantic moment shattered instantly. The woman's scream pierced the night, while her companion stumbled backward, nearly falling over a trash can in his panic. They fled toward the bar's back entrance, the woman's heels clicking frantically against the pavement. I watched them disappear inside. Then I reached up to pull the werewolf mask off my head, my own laughter echoing in the empty valley. Sweat dripped down my face as I caught my breath, the homemade costume suddenly feeling heavy and ridiculous. The lit-up eyes dangled from their wire connections, still glowing. It was only me, just another 20-something musician with too much time and maybe a questionable sense of humor. But for those few seconds, in that perfect darkness behind that forgotten dive bar, I had been something else entirely. Something that made people run. The thrill was intoxicating. I tucked the werewolf head under my arm, and I made my way back toward the venue, where my bandmates were probably wondering where their lead singer had vanished to. The night air felt cool against my sweat-soaked hair, and I could just imagine the couple inside, breathlessly recounting their encounter with what they'd surely describe as a werewolf. But that was the beauty of it. In that moment of pure terror, before logic kicked in, they had believed. They had seen something primal and ancient stalking them through the darkness. And I had been the one to give them that experience. Well, that was just the beginning. For a few weeks during that summer, decades and decades ago, I wore the costume while on tour with my band. We were a short-lived, hard-driving guitar outfit, the kind that burned bright and fast before inevitably flaming out. I was the lead singer, although that title felt more grandiose than our actual following warranted. Our Midwest tour was musical ambition meeting harsh reality. We played rough gigs along forested back roads, sleeping inside the van, which broke down twice. Once outside a truck stop in rural Indiana, and again in a parking lot in Ohio, where we had to wait 4 hours for a tow truck that smelled like cigarettes, and also our broken dreams. But it was during this tour that my werewolf costume truly came to life. I had initially built it the previous Halloween, but I kept fixing it over several weeks, hunching over my kitchen table with foam, fake fur, more hot glue than any reasonable person should own. The result was something that looked more science fiction than traditional horror. Shiny, silvery fur that caught stage lights beautifully. Lit-up eyes that I could control with a small battery pack. And those distinctive tall ears that made me tower over everyone else on stage. The costume wasn't just a gimmick. It was theatrical armor. When I wore it during performances, something shifted in the room's energy. Some audience members loved it. They'd cheer when I'd howl into the microphone, the lit-up eyes flashing in sync with the guitar solos. Others in the audience seemed genuinely unsettled by it, though, heading to the bar when I prowled the stage on all fours. My bandmates were initially skeptical, but came around quickly. Jake, our drummer, said he gave us an identity in a sea of generic rock acts. Sarah, our bassist, admitted it made her feel more confident on stage, like she was part of something bigger than just another struggling band. It's not just a costume, I'd insist during our post-show discussions back in our cramped van. It's mythology. It's primal. Rock and roll is supposed to tap into something wild, something untamed. They would nod along, although I could see the questions in their eyes, questions I wasn't quite ready to answer, even to myself. The night after our particularly good show in some forgotten Wisconsin town, I found myself buzzing with that post-performance energy that makes sleep impossible. The crowd had been electric, feeding off the werewolf persona in ways that I'd never experienced before. During our final song, when I let out that primal howl, it felt like the entire room erupted. It was intoxicating. I stepped out the back door of the venue, still wearing the full costume because, honestly, I wasn't ready to let go of that feeling yet. The lit-up eyes were glowing softly, and the silver fur rustled as I made my way toward the tree line behind the building. Nature was calling me, and the bathrooms inside were about as appealing as a gas station restroom during a zombie apocalypse. The woods were thick there, dense with pine and birch. It created a canopy so tight barely any moonlight filtered through. I found a suitable spot about 30 yards from the building, and I took care of my business, the costume making the whole process a little more complicated than it usually needed to be. But as I was zipping up and preparing to head back, I heard footsteps on the gravel behind the bar. A woman had stepped outside, probably taking a smoke break or getting some air. She was alone, silhouetted against the bar's back door light, and something mischievous stirred in my chest. The werewolf costume felt electric on my skin, and I could almost feel the theatrical power radiating from it. I stayed perfectly still in the shadows, watching as she lit a cigarette and leaned against the building's brick wall. The opportunity was too perfect to resist. Here was a chance to test the costume's power beyond the stage, to see what genuine fear looked like when it wasn't filtered through the safety of a performance. Moving as quietly as I could, I crept closer to the edge of the woods. The woman was completely absorbed in her cigarette, occasionally glancing up at the stars. She had no idea what was watching her from the darkness. I waited until she turned slightly away from me, and then I stepped into the light cast by the bar's security lamp. The silver fur caught the illumination beautifully, and I let my lit-up eyes flare to full brightness. Then I let out a low, rumbling growl. Her reaction was immediate and spectacular. The cigarette fell from her lips as she spun around, her eyes going wide with terror. For a split second, we locked gazes, her very human fear meeting my glowing artificial eyes. Then she screamed, a sound so pure and primal it made my skin crawl with excitement. And then something unexpected happened. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the gravel like a marionette with cut strings. She had fainted dead away from my cosplay costume. I stood there for a moment, frozen between triumph and concern. She lay crumpled on the ground, her cigarette still smoldering nearby. The power I had felt was intoxicating, but seeing her unconscious form brought a flicker of something else. Maybe guilt? Or maybe just the realization that I had crossed some invisible line. After a few seconds, she stirred, groaning softly as consciousness returned. I melted back into the shadows, watching as she struggled to her feet, confused and shaken. She looked around frantically, searching for whatever had terrified her, but I was already gone, invisible in the darkness. As I made my way back to the venue through the woods, I couldn't stop grinning. She had genuinely believed, if only for that moment, that she was face to face with something supernatural. My costume hadn't just scared her, it had transformed me into something mythical, something that belonged in campfire stories and whispered legends. The idea of haunting the backwoods behind venues took root in my mind, like a seed finding fertile ground. Why limit the werewolf to the stage when there was a whole world of unsuspecting people out there just waiting to believe in monsters? Over the next week, what started as a spontaneous thrill became a calculated ritual. I began targeting random patrons leaving clubs, studying their patterns like a predator learning its prey. The costume became my second skin, and I wore it with increasing confidence as I perfected my technique. There was the businessman outside a blues club in Madison, who literally jumped backward into a parked car when I emerged from behind the dumpster. His briefcase exploded open, scattering papers across the alley like confetti. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing as he scrambled to collect his documents, constantly glancing over his shoulder at me. Then, there was the couple in Minneapolis, who I stalked for 3 blocks, staying just at the edge of their peripheral vision. Every time they'd look back, I'd duck behind a tree or mailbox, but they could sense someone, or something, was following them. By the time they reached their car, they were practically sprinting. The woman kept saying, "Did you see it? Did you see it?" while her boyfriend fumbled with his keys. My personal favorite was the group of college kids outside a dive bar in Duluth. I waited until they were sufficiently drunk and separated from the main crowd, and then I gave them my full performance, howling, stalking on all fours, the lit-up eyes strobing in patterns that made them dizzy. One kid was so terrified, he actually climbed a streetlight, an actual streetlight. I had to admire his drunken athleticism. But not everyone reacted with the pure terror I craved. Some people just looked confused, like they couldn't quite process what they were seeing. Others got irritated, shouting things like, "Get a life, weirdo," or "Halloween is months away." Those reactions stung more than I wanted to admit. I was offering them something extraordinary, a brush with the supernatural, but they were treating it like a cheap parlor trick. The complaints started reaching the band. Club owners would corner Jake after shows, asking if we knew anything about some lunatic in a wolf costume harassing their customers. Sarah started getting weird looks from other musicians, who had heard rumors about our, quote, publicity stunts, unquote. "Dude, you need to chill with the costume thing," Jake told me one night as we loaded equipment into the van. "It's getting weird. People are starting to associate us with that creepy crap you're doing." I brushed him off with a laugh. "What's rock and roll without a little myth-making? We're creating a legend here. People will remember us." "Yeah, they'll remember us as the band with the psycho singer who stalks people in parking lots. That's not the kind of fame that we want." But I couldn't stop it. The thrill was too addictive. The power was too intoxicating. Every successful scare validated something deep inside me, some primal need to be feared and respected. The costume wasn't just fabric and foam anymore. It had become my identity, my purpose, my connection to something ancient and wild and real. The tension in the band was building like pressure in a steam pipe. My bandmates stopped laughing at my stories about the night's adventures. They'd exchange glances when I'd slip into the costume after shows, and I could feel their disapproval, like a physical weight. "You're losing yourself in this," Sarah warned me one night. "That thing is changing you." But I couldn't see it then. I was too drunk on the power, too convinced I was tapping into something profound. The werewolf costume wasn't changing me. It was revealing who I really was underneath all the social conditioning and polite pretense. I had no idea how wrong I was, or how close I was to meeting something that would teach me the true meaning of terror. That night, outside the small club, in whatever forgotten Michigan town we'd stumbled into, fog rolled in like something from a horror movie. The kind of thick, creeping mist that makes everything look otherworldly and sets your nerves on edge. Perfect hunting weather, I thought, as I slipped into my costume behind our van. This club was one of those places that felt like it existed in a pocket dimension. All wood paneling and cigarette ghosts, where the locals eyed touring bands with equal parts curiosity and suspicion. We played to maybe 30 people, but they'd been appreciative. Now as the night wound down, I was ready for my real performance. I spotted her leaving alone around midnight, a woman in her late 20s walking with that deliberate pace people use when they're trying to look confident in unfamiliar territory. She headed toward the side street where a few cars sat under a flickering streetlight. The fog swirled around her ankles like something that was alive. This would be perfect. The atmosphere was already doing half the work for me. I crept through the underbrush that lined the club's property, my lit-up eyes dimmed to avoid detection. The silver costume helped me blend with the fog, making me almost ghostly. I positioned myself about 20 feet ahead of her, crouched behind a cluster of birch trees, and I waited. She walked closer, her footsteps echoing in the mist. I could hear her keys jingling softly, probably already in her hand for safety. Smart woman, but not smart enough. When she was just 10 feet away, I prepared to spring my trap. I lit up my eyes, the growl formed in my throat, and I tensed my muscles for the dramatic reveal that would send her screaming into the night. But then, I froze. The woman I had seen walking toward me was gone. In her place stood something that made my blood turn to ice water. It was taller than me, even when I was wearing the costume's extended ears. Its fur was real, thick, coarse, and darker than midnight. Those weren't electrical eyes glowing in the darkness. They were actual yellow orbs that seemed to burn with their own inner fire. The creature's limbs were elongated, wrong somehow, like someone had stretched a human frame beyond its natural limits. Its claws weren't foam props. They were genuine talons, and they caught the streetlight with a wicked gleam. When it opened its mouth, I saw rows of teeth that belonged in nightmares. This wasn't a costume. This was something primal, something that had crawled out of humanity's oldest fears and taken physical form. The creature tilted its massive head and sniffed the air, those burning eyes scanning the fog. It was hunting, just like I had been, but I was no longer the predator in this scenario. The fear hit me like a physical blow. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs had turned to concrete. I crouched there, paralyzed, as the monster's gaze swept over my hiding spot. For a moment those yellow eyes locked onto mine, and I felt like prey being sized up for slaughter. Then, it moved. Not with the theatrical stalking I perfected, but with genuine predatory grace. It lunged toward my position with speed that defied physics, covering the distance in a heartbeat. I tried to bolt, but the creature was already there, its claws reaching for me. The last thing I remembered was the sound of its growl. Not the fake rumble I'd been producing, but something that vibrated in my bones and spoke to the deepest, most primitive part of my brain. And then, darkness claimed me as I fainted. I woke up behind the club in a puddle of my own humiliation. The fog had lifted, revealing the harsh reality of dawn creeping over the horizon. My costume was intact but damp with dew, and there was no sign of the creature that had attacked me. No claw marks in the dirt, no disturbed vegetation, nothing to suggest that my encounter had been anything more than a fever dream. Except for the wetness in my pants, and the crushing weight of absolute terror that still pressed against my chest. Yeah, I had wet myself. The great werewolf, the theatrical predator who'd been stalking innocent people for weeks. I had been so frightened that my body had simply given up all pretense of control. The shame burned hotter than any physical wound could have. I stumbled back to the van, where my bandmates were probably still asleep, my silver costume feeling like a mockery with every step. The lit-up eyes dangled uselessly from their wires, and the foam ears that had once made me feel powerful now seemed like children's toys. When I burst into our shared room, wide-eyed and reeking of fear, Jake and Sarah barely looked up at me. "Dude, you look like hell," Jake said. "Did you pass out in the woods or something?" I tried to explain what had happened, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. The creature, the yellow eyes, the way it had moved with supernatural speed and grace. But even as I spoke, I could see the skepticism in their faces. "You were drunk," Sarah said matter-of-factly. "You probably just imagined the whole thing and passed out in your costume. It wouldn't be the first time." This was different, I insisted, but my voice lacked conviction. Without evidence, without proof. The encounter felt surreal even to me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had simply pushed myself too far. Maybe my mind had snapped. But the fear remained real. The bone-deep terror that had paralyzed me in those woods didn't fade with the morning light. Something had shown me what genuine predation looked like, and I would never be the same. I stopped wearing the werewolf costume on stage after that night. The silver fur had once felt like armor, but now felt ridiculous and offensive. How had I ever thought that theatrical nonsense could capture something truly wild, or truly dangerous? The band limped through a few more shows, but the energy was gone. Without the costume, I felt exposed and ordinary on stage. The audiences sensed the change. and our performances became flat and uninspired. By the end of the week, we'd canceled the rest of the tour, and we headed home with our tails between our legs. I never told anyone the complete truth about that night. Some experiences are too profound or too transformative to share with people who weren't there. But in this case, it was just too embarrassing. I learned, in those fog-shrouded woods, there's a vast difference between playing at being a monster and actually being one. The werewolf costume now hangs in my closet, a reminder of the night that I discovered that some doors, once opened, can never fully be closed again.
See this episode in 3D with these Anagly 3D glasses. If you order from the link in the description, this channel earns a small commission. Order yours now.
Thanks, Biggie, and thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button. Or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.